Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday, it is 3 p.m. ET, and we are so pleased that you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 15 novels of suspense. My brand new one, look behind me, is a new cover, is One Wrong Word, which comes out in February, and I am so thrilled about that, and you will be hearing all about that here, but not today, because today we are so honored and thrilled and delighted. I'm trying to get the light off of this to welcome the fabulous Edwin Hill, whose brand new Who to Believe is out today. And you all just run, not right now, but after the show is over, run, and get Who to Believe. You will not be able to put it down. There were honestly places in this novel where I just gasped. I just couldn't believe what Edwin had written, and the reveals and the twists and the surprises. Oh my golly. And the structure is incredible. So run to get this. If you like Alfred Hitchcock, if you like Riley Sager, if you like Alfred Hitchcock meets Riley Sager, that's totally what this is. But actually it's Edwin Hill. It is actually uniquely, gorgeously Edwin Hill. And I cannot recommend this enough. And if you don't believe me, which you should, how about Kirkus Reviews? Kirkus gives it a starred review saying, confounding twists and seismic reveals stud Edgar nominee Hill's meticulously crafted, diabolically plotted mystery. A devilishly clever delight, says Kirkus Reviews. Randy is here, and Shannon is here, and Kathy and Kim. So nice to see you all. Katie, can't wait to see you in Georgia as well. And let me tell you very, very quickly before we get to Edwin, and then I will stop talking. I'm giving away 5 copies of this book today. It is so important for you to read this. It is so important to me to make sure that you read this, that I'm giving away 5 copies today. So you have such a great chance of winning, and you can enjoy Edwin Hill's Who to Believe. Edwin, what did you think when you saw that starred review? Welcome.
Thanks. First, thank you so much for having me today. I so appreciate it. And it's always good to chat with you, Hank. When I saw, I like almost fell over in my seat when I saw that review. I have to say, once in a while you get a review, like positive reviews are always delightful. Like you always feel wonderful when you see them. But once in a while you read a review that like really gets what you were trying to do in the novel that you created, that you spent an entire, a year and a half sitting with. And this review really really captured what I was trying to do with the novel. And sort of, I really felt like the reviewer had read it very closely and very carefully. So that was especially gratifying. And getting a Kirkus review, I know you got a starred review recently in Kirkus. It doesn't happen very often, and when it does happen, they're very stingy with their stars. And so to get one in Kirkus is extra special.
Yes, I completely agree. And we'll talk more about this in a minute, but I do think that meticulously crafted must be particularly gratifying. That all the pieces of the puzzle fit together. I mean, that must have been so difficult.
That was, and that is what was satisfying about that review, because this is it's not that complex of a story, but it's complex. It's very complex in the way it's constructed. And, it's one of those things where if one thing didn't really work very well, the whole thing might fall apart. And so I was really, I was very conscientious about that as I was writing it, and also nervous about it. You finish your book and you send it out to the world and it's no longer yours. And you think to yourself, well, what are people going to say about this thing? So again, it's just gratifying to hear meticulously crafted when you've spent so much time trying to layer things in a way that makes sense to the reader, but is also surprising the reader in the right sequence and in the right way. That is.
And I do want to talk about that with you later, because it is quite a tour de force in plot and point of view. But I think, and I'm seeing Kathy Lanigan is here, and Gail Rosenfeld is here, and Mark is here saying, my man, Renee Herskowitz and Randy. This is fantastic that you all are here. We're talking about Edwin Hill's fantastic Who to Believe. I mean, you talk about.
Hello, Mark.
Hey, Mark, you talk about complexity. And I think that's really interesting, because it's it's complex in a gorgeous, seamless way, but it's not complicated. It's not confusing. And that line between complex and gorgeous and intelligent and fun and twisty and confusing is a tightrope, isn't it, for an author to write, to walk?
Oh my gosh, yes, it is. That's so well put too, Hank. Um, this novel, I should probably talk a little bit about the structure so people kind of understand what I'm
Let
talking
me stop
about.
you right there. I do want to, let me stop you right there. I'm going to just like, this is what I do. I just interrupt you because I'm going to introduce you so everybody knows who you are.
Oh,
And then,
great.
and then then we can talk to the people to all these people who are just coming in droves. Hey, Mary Garrett, coming in droves to hear you today. They can hear about the book in the proper order. Since we're talking
Very
about
good.
seamless, we'll go from there. So quickly, Edwin Hill is the Edgar and Agatha nominated author of 3 novels in the Hester Thursby series and a standalone thriller, The Secrets We Share. He was born in Duxbury, Massachusetts, and spent most of his time obsessing over the famous 5, Agatha Christie, and somehow finding his way into C.S. Lewis's wardrobe. And I just wonder how many of us had the same heritage of reading. We all did. His parents were fond of taking his sister and him on month-long camping trips across the US and Canada. And one of his best memories is finishing a copy of the 7 Dials mystery while the rest of the family visited Mount Rushmore. I love you, Edwin. I totally do. My parents took all of us kids to Washington, D.C. on a road trip to Washington, D.C. And I'm in the back of the car reading. And my mom is like, honey, the Lincoln Memorial, honey, the Washington Monument. I'm like, yeah.
Yep.
So my mother used to say, participate, sweetheart, participate. But I would rather. Were you like that?
Oh, I was definitely like that. I was definitely a little bit of a loner in many ways, but I also had all of my friends that I discovered through reading. And a lot of them were, really good people that I would have loved to have met in real life.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. We can make a whole list of those things. Let me just finish your bio because it is really interesting. After attending Wesleyan University and graduating with a BA in American Studies, he headed west to San Francisco for the dot-com boom. Later, he returned to Boston, earned an MFA from Emerson College, and switched gears to work in educational publishing. He served as the vice president and editorial director for Bedford St. Martin's, a division of Macmillan Learning, for many years before turning to writing full-time. He lives in Roslindale, Massachusetts, just up the road from me, with his partner Michael and his favorite reviewer, their lab, Edith Ann, who likes his first drafts enough to eat them. Has Edith Ann actually eaten your work?
No, but I would like her to read. I would really love her to eat the draft I'm working on right now, because then I could start afresh.
Exactly. I know that feeling that, oh my golly, this is going to be terrible. If you ever felt like that about who to believe, and I'd love to know that later, you have conquered this, you have wrestled this gorgeous, propulsive, twisty, riveting novel to the ground. Tell us, it's so difficult to talk about a thriller, but you tell us what this is about. So you be careful about it.
Oh, sure. I can tell you a lot about it because a lot of the story that we discover, a lot of the story that we explore actually happens on the very first page. And in the very first pages. So the story starts when a local restaurateur named Laurel Thibodeau is found murdered in her own home. She's been asphyxiated. And as often happens in these cases, her husband is the prime suspect. He has gambling problems. He just took out a sizable insurance policy on his wife. He also has a rock solid alibi. And so even though the press is sort of hounding him and a lot of the people in town believe that he's guilty, he has an explanation for where he was. So then the story really focuses in on a group of 6 friends who are all gathering for a birthday party in the wake of this murder. So they gather at this seaside house, and each of them has their own take on what happened to Laurel. And I'm not giving anything away when I tell you not all of these people make it through this dinner. And so we hear in turn from each of the 6 participants at this dinner party about what they believe happened to Laurel and what they and how they perceive the party that they're at, the birthday party that they're at. And each of them has a very different take on who they are and what happened at that party.
And the way you've structured this novel, I mean, I have called this a tour de force in structure. It's gorgeously done. It's in parts. And part one begins The Shrink. And when I opened it, I'll just talk about me personally for a second. When I opened it, I thought, okay, part one, The Shrink, I get it. And I started reading it, but I didn't. You just fooled me so much with this. Can you talk a little bit about the structure and where the ideas, the idea came from for how it was done?
Sure. Yeah, so I really love structure, and I really love to play with the way story is told. And so I had a couple of influences for this novel. The first is a movie that came out in the 50s, directed by Akira Kurosawa, called Rashomon, and that's what this type of story is called. It's called a Rashomon. And in that movie, I think there are 5 characters. I haven't seen it for a while. There are 5 characters, and you, the viewer, see the incident of the movie through each character in turn. So the first fifth of the movie is told from one character's point of view. The second fifth of the movie is told from a second character's point of view, and so on. So I've always loved that movie, and I've always loved that style of storytelling. And then I was also inspired by a TV show called Everything. I was inspired only by media, not by books, I hate to say. So I was also inspired by a TV show called The Affair that ran about 10 years ago on Showtime. And so in that, for anyone who hasn't seen it, in that show, especially at the beginning, they sort of changed it later on. Every episode would be split in half. And it was about an affair between a man and a woman, Allison and Noah. And the first half of this episode would be told from Noah's point of view, and the second half of the episode would be told from Allison's point of view. And the way they saw the events of the story were completely different, right down to what they were wearing. So like you might see the scene from Noah's point of view, and Allison would be wearing jeans, but when she was telling the story, she was wearing a skirt. And so like as you're watching, you're thinking to yourself, why are they seeing themselves this way? Why are they seeing these details about themselves? And then I was also inspired by this show called Clickbait. I think I was the only person in the world who watched it. It was on Netflix, and it was just I really enjoyed it, and it kind of did the same thing. So in this novel, I have 6 point of view characters, and it starts with the Shrink, and each of them sort of has a little. They all have secrets about themselves, and they have things that hold back. So they have what I call their shadow self. So for instance, the psychiatrist is named Farley Drake, and he has a nasty habit of getting too close to his clients. And one of the things I really liked about this story was exploring what it's like to be in a role like a psychiatrist or a minister or a police chief. These are all the people who are attending the party. What is it like to live in a town, a very small town? This town that they live in is tiny, and to have a role in that community where you live in the community, you're a member of the community, but you also sort of sit a little bit above the community at the same time, because you're interacting with people in some kind of way where you're advising them. And so like for the big question for Farley, who's the therapist, my big question was, what does he do when he goes out and he sees his clients socially? And he's not ethically minded, so he does whatever he wants.
I mean, it's interesting because going back to this point of view, and you're talking about when you're writing Farley's point of view, can I just do a little tangent? Farley Drake sounds like, is that a Hitchcockian kind of name? Where does that
There's Farley Granger stars in Strangers on a Train.
Okay.
That's where I got the name.
That's where you got the name? Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
But it's so meta because it's just instantly you're suspicious. And then I thought, well, why? Because he's sort of handsome and seems sort of smart on page 1. The thing about point of view that I love and that you handle so gorgeously and that is so difficult is, one of the first choices an author has to make in writing a novel is what point of view are you going to be in? Through whose eyes and heart and brain and mind you're going to be telling the story. And the reader expects when they open the book that essentially the first person they meet in the book who's telling the story is going to be the point of view character throughout.
Mm-hmm.
And so in this case, no, you thought, I'm not doing that. I'm having 7 or 8 different points of view characters. How do you, but you, and forgive me for this long question, you as the author not only know the true truth, but you know each of their truths that you then have to weave together to let us realize the truth. I don't know how to ask this other than how did you do that? Or how did you think about that? Or how did you be each character as you wrote them?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the fun things, so all my novels up until this point have been from multiple points of view, but in a more traditional way. So where you'd have like chapter 1 is one character, chapter 2 is the second character. And one of the things I really liked about this process was because each character was about 1/6 of the novel, I got to really like inhabit that character for sort of the length of a very long short story. And so I approached each section. I gave each section the same structure that I would give an overall novel. So like not to go too crazy into structure, like I always use a 3-act structure, which is just a beginning, a middle, and an end. And there are these certain points within that structure where you sort of create drama, and those are called plot points. And so when I was structuring each of these little sort of mini stories, so Farley's story is about 50 pages, I structured it so that it had a midpoint, 2 plot points, and an inciting incident, so that when you read the whole book, you don't get 1 inciting incident, you wind up getting 6 inciting incidents, which is sort of what helps drive the narrative and helps with the tension within the story. Go on.
No, go ahead.
But as far as I'm not always a planner when I write. Like right now, the novel I'm working on right now, I'm the exact opposite of a planner. With this novel, I did have to plan quite a bit because it was so complex the way I was structuring it. So like I knew who did it, I knew who the victims were throughout the entire novel, but then I'd be surprised by things. And one of the things so for example, I really love it when objects take on meaning within a story. And so within this story, there was this birthday cake, and because there's a birthday party, so there had to be a birthday cake, right? And like after you've mentioned an object, like 20 times in a story, you have to say there's a reason why I'm mentioning this birthday cake 20 times. And so I wound up really using that birthday cake, not really to tell the story, but to help develop character, because there are at least 3 characters. Who their interactions with this birthday cake inform you, the reader, about who they are as people. And I wasn't planning that from the beginning. That just sort of like evolved as the story was going through. So those are the things that I really love when they sort of like pop out of nowhere. And I realized that they kind of were there the whole time, even though I wasn't planning for them to be there.
And Robin says the cake takes on a life of its own. I mean, it's like there's the person who wants the cake, and there's the person who is supposed to be getting the cake, and the person who knows that this is all going on and has something to do with that. I don't want to give anything away, and that does bring up another wonderful thing about the structure of this, the storytelling method of this, is that as you hear about this party, you have the first person that you've heard about it from's thoughts in your head as a reader. And then you know more from the second person, and you think, well, wait, that's not what he or she said. That's not how, wait a minute, that's not what I thought it was. And so the reader's Rubik's Cube in their head, in their reading head, shifts and changes throughout the book.
Yeah. And so the first section is told by Farley. The very first scene that we see is a therapy session between he and another character named Alice, who is the birthday girl. She's about to turn 40. And so the next section is so we go through Farley's section, we learn some things about Farley, and then the next section is from Alice's point of view, and we actually start in the same therapy session. And I did that very purposefully because I wanted you, the reader, to be like, okay, these are the rules of this novel. I suddenly know what the rules of this novel is, because Alice's perception of that therapy session is completely different from what Farley's was. But then you can't. So the other challenge with this novel is like you're repeating things. So you can't repeat things too many times, right? And so I do repeat that scene between Farley and Alice. We get to see Alice's perspective on it. But then it was really important to take Alice and take her away from Farley's story, because now we get to see what she's doing with her day. We get to see how she gets ready for the party, but we're not sort of like going over the same material that we were going over with Farley. We're seeing new parts of the story. So those were the decisions that I had to make a lot with this. Like, where do we repeat? Where do we sort of just like pare way back? If a scene is, if we've already been to a scene, how do I pare it way back so that the reader isn't getting bored?
I mean, and I have to tell you, readers, we're talking about Who to Believe by Edwin Hill. Trisha says all of Edwin's books are like layer cakes in the best way. Theme here. And then Shannon Shanson says, now I want cake. That's we should have brought cake. The thing is, though, that talk about the layers. This is not visible to the reader. The all this work that you do as an author is the underneath of the iceberg, and then we just get this gorgeous story. How did you know to think about rules, and how did you sometimes, like you were talking about the cake, sometimes you realize that you've created the rules that you didn't know you were making. Oh, is that part of the fun of writing this, the surprises that you get along the way?
Oh yeah, that was really fun. I mean, I did sort of study, again, it was all TV, but I studied a lot of shows that did this, and I wanted to see how they were repeating, and how they were not repeating, and how they would sort of layer these stories together. But no, I mean, the fun of the writing process, and it doesn't seem fun all the time when you're actually doing it. But as you're developing a story and sort of blindly pushing your way through it, the fun is when those connections all of a sudden fall into place, and you think, oh my goodness, I have not gotten up at 4 a.m. every day for no reason. I got up at 4 a.m. every day because I was finally getting to this point. And then you think to yourself, why did it take me so long to get to this point? So like for this novel, I will say there was like a decision I often find with writing, you want things to be dramatic when you're writing. You want to be pushing, you want to be creating as much tension as possible, which is the exact opposite of what you want to do in real life, right? You don't want any tension in your real life. And so I always find when I start a novel, it's really boring because, especially a first draft, it's really boring because I'm like avoiding the tension like I do in my real life. And then so I have to find the places where I can inject, where I'm turning away from tension, I can turn right toward the tension instead. And I don't want to give away what one of those things are because it's a major plot point. But it was a very, like, getting to the point where I was like really pushing someone to do something. It was important that I do that.
And that is so interesting. And again, if you just joined us, we're talking about the fantastic Who to Believe by Edwin Hill, which is out today. Do not miss this. I know I had in an early draft of one of my novels, I had a false alarm, a fire alarm go off, and it was a false alarn. And my editor said, why don't you have a fire? Why would you? why would you? And I think about that all the time now. You know, why am I pulling my punch with the false alarm? Oh, everybody's okay. It's no problem. Nobody's hurt. You know, when fire is much more interesting in a novel. You know, I want to read also to you the Publishers Weekly starred review. They're pouring in. And it says, as soon as readers think they found a safe landing place for their sympathies, Hill detonates one of the series of game-changing twists he's planted throughout the narrative. Again, let me ask you, you know, you have your readers in the palm of your hand in this, and you know your readers are smart and they're going to try to figure it out. Are you aware of that as you're writing?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm not very good at many things, but one thing that I am actually an idiot savant at are those logic puzzles that you have on the LSAT or the GRE. It's like, you know, Hank and Edwin are having a party and they're inviting 7 people. 2 of them are vegetarians, 3 of them don't eat chocolate, and 5 of them are alcoholics. How many of them are you serving mole to? So like you have like those things anyway. So like for whatever reason, that is like the one thing on earth that I'm really good at. And so what I love to do is like throw these pieces down, like the pieces that I've made up myself, throw them onto the table and start trying to piece them together without really looking at the picture, to see how they can come together. And it can be so frustrating for a little while, but then again, when it all of a sudden it lands together, you think, oh, that's exciting. And then I think to myself, how am I going to guide my reader through this in a way that they are my smart reader? You're right. I like to write for people who are engaged in the story. And how am I going to lay this out in a way that's going to make sense to them? It's not going to be frustrating as a reader. You're not going to like lose the thread or anything like that. And how am I going to give them enough information so that they really get to the end of this story and feel that they've invested their time wisely. Oh, with this novel, this novel reminds me a tiny little bit, not that much, but a tiny little bit of And Then There Were None, the Agatha Christie novel, because in that novel, there is no detective. The detective is the reader. And in this novel, there is no detective. The detective is the reader. The reader pulls everything together in the end with a little help from a mystery guest. We have a final narrator at the end who pulls things together for you. But you, the reader, are really the detective here.
And it is superly and supremely fair. Everything that you need to know is in the novel. If you are being the detective as a reader, if you're being the detective and trying to figure out what happened, if you are smart as Edwin Hill, you could figure it out. But I have to tell you, it is just, I mean, when I finished this book, I just stood and applauded. It is so much fun. I have two more questions for you, and then we'll take questions from Renee is here, and Shannon is here, and Gail is here, and Kim and Robin. This is so, hey, Mindy, everybody is here today. And hi, Randy. Randy says, even if I don't win a free copy, I'll rush to an independent bookseller to buy this book.
Thank you, Randy.
Libro screaming to buy this book. Fantastic. We love those voices in our head. Talk a little bit about the small town. Is it a real place? I saw a question earlier asking whether it was Duxbury. Is it Monreath? Is that a real place?
It's called Monreath, and that's the name of a small coastal town in England that I borrowed. So it's based on, if you read this novel, you will see parts of Duxbury. You'll definitely see the Powder Point Bridge if you know Duxbury at all, where I grew up. And it also has parts of Plymouth, which is right next to Duxbury for anyone who doesn't know. Plymouth is a much bigger town than Duxbury, and I really took the business center from Plymouth and added it to Duxbury because they don't have one. And then I took it and I didn't put it on the Cape or on the South Shore. I put it on the South Coast of Massachusetts, which is a really beautiful, it used to be more undiscovered than it is now, and now it's sort of getting discovered. And I took a lot of a town called Westport, and I sort of added that in. Westport is a very bucolic town. Westport sort of reminds me of Duxbury when I was a kid, when there was a lot more farmland there. And so there's it's very bucolic, very beautiful, also on the coast. So I took 3 coastal towns, combined them into one, and slapped it down on the South Coast there.
And what is it about that small town atmosphere, that sort of pressure cooker of a small town atmosphere, that guides this book as well?
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, everyone knows everyone in a small town like that. And I wanted to make this about I wanted to make this pretty personal. And so I grew up in a very small town where everyone knows each other. And there are lots of benefits to that. There's a few drawbacks to it. And so I wanted to really explore what it's like to live in a town like this where everyone knows each other. I also, when I was growing up, my dad was the principal of my high school. And so I didn't realize this until I left and went to college, but that's like a unique experience growing up with that, right? And when you're in a role like that, when you're in a role like being a principal, you're both part of the community, much like Farley, the psychiatrist, is part of the community, but you also sort of sit above the community in a way. And so all of the characters at the party they all have roles like that. So there's a psychiatrist, there's a police chief, there's a minister, there's a financial advisor, et cetera, and they all have these roles where these jobs where they sort of insert themselves into other people's lives. And so I thought that was kind of interesting, an interesting lens to look at this small town through.
It works gorgeously. We're talking about Who to Believe that came out just today from Edwin Hill. I have one last question, and then we'll take questions from you all, because Gail Rosenfeld says small town Cabot Cove. Anyone? You have put together this incredible game. You don't have not just a novel, but you have a special clue game. Can you tell us about that and where to get it?
Oh, sure. So I've been working with a publicist on this, and it was so fun. So we put together a clue game. It's got a board, pieces, and everything. You can go to my website, edwin-hill.com, and go to the Who to Believe page, and there's a link right there to it. But it's like totally fun. I mean, you'll sort of see. So like each of the main characters has a little tagline that goes with them. So there's like Farley Drake, the psychiatrist with a nasty habit of getting too close to his clients. Chloe McComber, who's one of the characters. She's a kid, the 8th grader obsessed with an older man. And so you use each of the characters like you would in a clue game. So yeah, edwin-hill.com. I should know my own website. And then just go to the Who to Believe page.
That is great. And Margaret has cleverly posted that for everyone, and that is so much fun. Did you laugh putting together that clue game?
Oh my God, we had so much fun doing it. Yeah, we had so much fun, and it really came out great.
That's fantastic. Well, it's a book and a game, and who knows what might happen after that. This is as cinematic and as character-driven and propulsive and surprising and twisty as anything I could ever imagine. It also reminds me a little bit of, do you know Magpie Murders? Did you see Magpie Murders?
Oh my God, I love Magpie Murders. I love the book. I still have, I think I have 1 or 2 episodes left of the TV show, but the book is so good.
And the TV show is genius. The same thing that you were talking about the objects that repeat and the transitions that work. A red car will drive out of the 1935 part of the movie, and then a red Volvo will drive into the contemporary time to keep the reader balanced between whose point of view it is and when it is. Magpie Murders on PBS. Love, and love Edwin Hill's Who to Believe. Let's take some questions. As Margaret says, last chance to ask a question, and that is right now. I've seen so many questions. Kathy Hamdy Swink. Hey, Kathy, nice to see you. Says, love Magpie book and TV. Katie says, if you were not an author, what would you be?
Oh, gosh, that's a great question. One of the fun things about being an author is you get to explore careers that you might have done otherwise. And so in this one, I explored a couple of different careers, but I would love to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist like Farley. I'd want to be a more ethical one than Farley is. I do like helping professions, so.
I'll talk a little bit while you cough. There are a couple of questions about who's your favorite character in your novel and why. And someone else was asking whether was anybody in the novel sort of like you. And it's interesting about, Farley. I did picture you as Farley. And it was Katie who said, do you see yourself in any of the characters? So you were talking about liking helping professions.
Yeah. So I don't think I'd be a very good minister, but I sort of like the concept of being a minister. So there's a minister in this story as well. And so, yeah, I always I love to explore things that I haven't done with my own life, because it's always fun to sort of imagine things like that. So do I see, there are 2 characters. I mean, Farley's super vain. So I hope to think that I'm not like Farley. I think the character that I sort of see myself as, there are 2 of them. There's Richard McComber, who is the mechanic. He is, I think he's like a very gentle soul. I don't think of myself as a gentle soul, but he's a very gentle soul, and he has made some interesting decisions. Let's put it that way. So I sort of saw a little bit of myself in that. But the character, I hate to say it, the character I really see myself as is the 13-year-old girl, Chloe McComber. So She's sort of I would say she's the heart of the novel.
Yeah, it's wonderful. We're talking about Who to Believe by Edwin Hill, which is out today. We have time for a couple more questions. Who else has a question? You sound like Gail. Hey, Gail, you sound like you really enjoyed the book structure. Do you think you'll use it again?
Yeah, I would use it again. I think it's really I might do it a slightly differently. Actually, Hank and I were just chatting about something else a couple weeks ago, and she recommended this book, and now I can't. You'll remember what it is, but this book that's told it backwards. So it starts on like at the end, and it goes backwards.
Wrong place, wrong time.
Yes, wrong place, wrong time. So I haven't that one. I think is really interesting. That's another sort of weird structure I'd love to explore. And this one, I would want to, if I did this structure again, it would be really fun, but I'd have to do it in a way that's different. And because the way this was structured was very specific for how information was revealed to the reader. I'm trying to say this without giving anything away. So it's very specific for how the information was revealed to the reader. So if I did this again, I'd want to do it in a way that's different, so that I'm revealing the information in different ways. So someone who read both books wouldn't be able to see all of my tricks.
Yeah. I was thinking as you were talking, which came first, the story or the structure?
This one, I would say, it all came together at the same time. Actually, I will say this is one of those novels that like really formed quickly. I knew where it was going to be set. I knew who all of the characters were. I think I knew who all the characters were, and I knew who did it, and I knew why. And that is like a miracle, because that doesn't always happen. And I would say, like, the big surprise, like there is a final chapter that I did not plan. That was like really that was a surprise for me, and I needed that chapter. I don't want to say anything about it.
Don't say anything about it.
Yeah, but I needed that chapter to tie everything together, and it took me a while to figure out how I was going to do that.
I mean, as I was reading your novel, I kept thinking, how is he going to do this? Sometimes I'm a pantser totally. I have no idea what's going to happen. And some days when I'm writing, I have this fear that I've created a mystery that I can't solve. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to do this. I know the story, but I don't know what the ending is. And that ending, when it comes, knock on wood, it's this glorious moment of the puzzle pieces all fitting together. And you realize, well, I already wrote all that. Yep. It could only be this. Why didn't I see it?
Yep. Oh, yeah. That's happened to me more times than not. So, and I'm waiting for it to happen with my current manuscript. I've been waiting for 6 months.
I promise it will. It happens when the time comes. It happens when the time comes. One last question. I'm looking forward to reading Who to Believe. Yay, says Kathy Lanigan. I also love your Hester Thursby series. Well, there'll be more book in that series.
I hope so. I have I wrote a short story, Hester Thursby's short story, which is called Thursby and White. And it's about Hester and her, and the police detective that she works with, Angela White. That I really liked. It was sort of like a holiday story. And it was, I don't know if this got national play or not, but there was a story here in Boston about some folks at Harvard who were stealing body parts and selling them online. So I sort of used that as part of the story, and I really liked it. And I think it could possibly expand into a larger novel, but I have to finish what I'm working on now first.
Yes, I when I saw that story of the selling of the body parts, I just thought someone's got to use.
Oh yeah, it's just like it's so nutty.
The truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
I have to say, we are running out of time. Burke and Hare live again, says Mighty Blaze. Susie Baldwin says this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much. And Renee says, let me just ask what. And Mindy says, I knew today for Hank and Edwin, I would be willing. When I look over here, I look at the comments, you all. I knew today for Hank and Edwin, I would be willing to miss General Hospital.
Oh my God, you missed it.
Mindy,
I love General Hospital.
Do you?
Well, I loved it. I used to watch it a lot when I used to watch it when I was in the 80s.
Yeah,
back in the Anna Devane days.
Must Absolutely. You all are, the reactions are pouring in. I hope that, Edwin, when we're finished, that you'll pop over to the comments and look at everyone's comments, because the admiration and love and applause are coming through, and some questions too for you that I wish we had time to take, but we can't, you all. Edwin, thank you so much for being here today. Let's spin
Thank you.
5 times. We're going to spin the wheel of fun. And as we do this, the rules are a tiny bit different. We'll contact you after the show is over to tell you how to claim your prize, because we don't want to take too long. And the winner of the first book is Renee Herskowitz. Hooray, hooray, hooray.
Yay.
And before the confetti even falls, let's spin one more time. And we have the suspense is Avram Levinsky. And Avram had some really kind words to say about your book in the comments, and we welcome you today, Avram, as well. And the third winner is Mary Garrett, Storyteller Mary. Storyteller Mary will love this book. She is the queen of storytellers. This is number 4, right? Round number 4. The winner is Catherine Olson. Yeah, Lorraine Johansson. Lorraine Johansson, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so glad you are here, Lorraine. I love you on Instagram. And one final winner is Tanya Jackson. Fantastic, you all. We are so pleased that you have all won a copy of Who to Believe. And I don't need to tell you, you know about books, and you know about publishing, and you know about writing. The next thing you do, if you did not win, you run and get Who to Believe by Edwin Hill. It is absolutely fantastic. It is riveting, and it is incredibly unique, and you will love it. Edwin, congratulations.
Thank you.
Everything on your pub day. May you sell billions of books, and may so many people realize how wonderful this novel is. Are you excited about it?
Oh, I'm very excited about it. And I'm very excited about it. I'm very excited about seeing it get out in the world. It's so fun to connect with readers and to hear from readers. I mean, anyone is free to drop me a note. You can find my contact information on my website. But it's always fun to hear from readers and to just deliver something that satisfies us as a reading experience. So I love to hear from people. I love events like this where we can actually chat with each other. So I very much appreciate Missing General Hospital. And I didn't know Anna Devane was still on the show. I knew she left, but I didn't know she came back.
See, if you just keep with the story, everything comes around. That is just great. Edwin, congratulations. It is a marvelous book. Let me quickly tell you, somebody asked if there was a 4:00 prime time on prime time today. There is not a 4:00 on prime time today. Our schedule is a little bit different this week. We wanted to get Edwin on, and that had to be at 3. So no 4:00 prime time today, but next week at 3:00, let me show you who we have. And seriously, do not miss this. Come to next Tuesday at 3:00 for Night Watching by Tracy Sierra. Have you read this yet, Edwin? Oh,
no, but I'm doing an event with her, I think next week.
This is so terrifying that I started reading the first page. It's one of those books that I thought, oh, let me just open it and see how it is. And I started reading the first page, and I found myself 15 minutes later leaning against the kitchen counter after I'd opened the mail, and and it's harrowing, absolutely harrowing. And then at 4:00, Necessary Deeds by Mark Wish. I have not read this yet, as you can see, but it's about a successful literary agent who has been in prison for 4 years for a crime of passion. Had me right there, right? Had me right there. Wow. Necessary Deeds by Mark Wish at 4:00.
That sounds great.
Doesn't it? Yeah, it really does. So Night Watching at 3 p.m. by the fabulous Tracy Sierra. I don't want to cover up her name. Fabulous Tracy Sierra at 3 next Tuesday, and at 4, Necessary Deeds by Mark Wish. And today, Who to Believe by Edwin Hill. Congratulations on your pub day, Edwin.
Thank you, Hank. And I'll see you very soon at Brookline Booksmith.
Oh, fantastic.
For your event.
Look, my new poster, One Wrong Word, February February 2nd at Brookline Booksmith with Tess Gerritsen. And then February 6th at An Unlikely Story in
Oh, that's going to be great.
And that will be marvelous as well. So I do hope to see you all there. And my schedule is on my website, and my schedule is on all kinds of social media. And I hope to see you all there so we can have Crime Time in person. You all, thank you so much for coming today. We've loved this and loved this discussion. And hey, you all, remember, it is always safe inside a book. And we will see you next time.